Hello, welcome back to Terra Infina, to my audience of, from my view counts, 0 people. Apologies for this being a bit late. So today we're going to be talking about dragons. So, dragons started off in the first age as a normal type of, large reptile, no different from a Komodo dragon. Largely they fed off small birds, or occasional low-lying shrubbery, and were more omnivorous than anything. Though this adaptation appears to have definitely disappeared in not many years after, they started to show it, as you will see very soon. They were already starting to have some aquatic leaning already, as we can see here. With the picture that is presently being drawn on screen, you can see that there is it's starting to get longer and starting to show fin-like structures. Well, not like structures. I would say they are proper fins by now, as well as we start for a dolphin-esque tail, which I probably should have rubbed out the rest of there. I was rather rushed with all of this due to circumstances, though, which is the reason why some of these qualities will not be as good as I usually like them to be. Yes, so apologies about that in advance. Yes, and of course they were already starting to go more in water. At the point of the second age, where the ice started hitting and the surface became unbearably cold, with giant storms surging everywhere, these creatures ended up fleeing into the sea, becoming the first of the leviathans, largely feeding off of the debris of all of those creatures which died from the storm above the water, until they managed to grow a significant amount, and of course started cannibalizing, forming different classes amongst their groups, with the strong ones tending to be lower, whereas they would constantly hunt each other, with numerous of their species becoming nearly extinct. This is the first of this phenomenon which is found here, where predation appears to be of a higher level on this world. Next up we have a wyvern. A wyvern is one of those previous reptiles we talked about that doesn't possess a certain other trait that we're about to get into. The ancestors of the wyverns ended up developing their wings as a part of their arms, a bit like how bats ended up developing their wings. Yes, rather than the more growths that the later dragons would end up developing. Yes, wyverns also tend to be more opportunistic, as they lack the strength which true dragons have. I am, of course, about to describe why, literally in a few seconds. I'm just going to give you a quick second to look at this. And then, of course, we have the thing that's starting to separate true dragons. You see, it all began with essentially mating displays, as with a few other draconic features, where dragons would, find any gold and stuff from meteorites and show it to each other to be able to attract potential mates, as shown here with the one that is very, just not sure how to describe it, sassily, just sitting on top of all of that gold in attempt to impress its mate below. Yes, this ended up... Apologies, just had a quick cut in it because of some reason this thing turned off halfway through. But essentially this led to, them eventually harvesting the magic that is found within gold necessarily, and then using it to be able to increase their power and, of course, hunt better, especially in this new environment. Next up, we can start to see the drakes and such. These ones didn't really These ones ended up, as everything was getting colder, fleeing down below for the insulation of the ground. And well, along with a ton of other things, they settled what would eventually become what is the cavern known as the Dwarven Mines, aka my rip-off Underdark. Yes, and became the dominant predators there. Yes, and of course, some of them ended up eventually gaining some other things, and of course due to convergent evolution, which is far more, well, likely in this world, because when something dies, its soul energy can impact the creature and make it a bit like it. This will become important later, I can promise you that much. But it's also very useful for dragons. Next up is an ancestor of... Remember that semi-aquatic one we found earlier? The one which I'm pretty sure I remember to tell you lived on beaches. If not, I hope you inferred that. Okay? These ones ended up going more towards rivers and such, and essentially over time their, well, arms kind of retracted. These again are ones that do not really possess the ability to harvest from gold all that much, except for some that were either impacted by a spirit or the soul energy of another creature to an immense extent, though that is incredibly unlikely. Yes, they were often worshipped by some of the cultures at the time as gods, and many spirits took their form in order to, well, attempt to scare humans into giving them offerings. Little did the people know that it was just a spirit. Heck, some of the dragons, they got a bit too powerful, because if the dragon gets too powerful, it gains sentience. Also tried to pretend to be spirits and did that. So next we have these things. They are the, well, progenitors of the fire gene found in many of the modern dragons. They ended up essentially developing fire as a way to get that, to, well, produce heat and such and able to survive. But only within their chest. But eventually, over time, it began to turn into a more weapons-based thing, as eventually all of the giant trees which covered the world began to die, as with basically everything else. Very few species were, well, left around to fight over resources, and at that point in something that's largely a carnivore definitely is going to have issues. Next we have this one, which I think actually looks terrible. I am genuinely sorry for you people having to look at this thing. Yes, it's simply because of just how terrible it is, because of how rushed I was. Effectively, the dragons ended up developing these small growths on its back due to, well, radiation and such, which eventually, and of course, it was selected to, well, mate. And eventually this ended up becoming a gene which turned into wings. Okay, thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Bye.